So we share part of our brains with reptiles, and this is the emotional center of our brain. It's the oldest part of our brain. You know, it's the part that is basically trying to determine whether somebody is a friend or a foe. And that's it. It's very black and white. And, you know, we need to make a determination at times, you know, especially when we're in a state of fear or we're trying to deal with something quickly, you know, is we need to decide, okay, is this a friend, is this an enemy or a friend? And that is it from that state of being. This is the state that we go in when we're in crisis. It's the state that we go in when, you know, we're feeling anxiety and fear. And it's also the state that we're in when we're in like high conflict with our partner or dealing with a teenager that might be upsetting us or yeah, exactly.
Anyone.
Yeah. So when this happens, when we go into what we would call reptilian brain, it's not a time to make thoughtful decisions. It's not a time to make good decisions. In fact, beyond determining whether somebody's a friend or a foe. But usually if you're doing that with somebody you love, you've just turned them into a black and white object, and you're going to miss out on all the nuances. So when you're in a state where I would call it a flooded state, the most important thing at that moment is to figure out how to get yourself off the cliff. You know, to stop all action, don't make decisions at this time, try to calm yourself down. And that's the first thing. I've taught a lot about crisis intervention. I used to work at an art school. I was the director of counseling. And so everybody always wanted to have workshops on crisis intervention because, you know, there was always a lot of stuff going on at art school. And so this was like the step one of any crisis situation, is to get to a place where you can calm your nervous system. This is not what we're prone to do under states of crisis or uncertainty. What we're prone to do is to want to join in to whatever that feeling is. We think, you know, we're kind of herd animals. And so our brains want to resonate with those around us. And we want to immediately throw ourselves into the same state of being of those around us. So for example, you go to the grocery store, you know, people are freaking out about something and you find yourself getting activated because of that herd animal situation, how our brains tend to resonate at the same level of those around us. So the first thing you want to do is to try to calm it down, try to calm down. And then your capacity to think in a more nuanced manner will come back online, you know, and so that's always the first thing you want to do. People do this in different ways, you know. So I want to ask you, Autumn, what do you do to help calm yourself down when you're starting to feel anxious?
Oh, I call it when the squirrels are at their most evil. Squirrels running around. Sometimes they're in my head. Sometimes I can feel them running around in my chest. And it's breath. I'm just remembering to breathe, because when we tend to get all worked up, this happens, and and that makes it hard to access any kind of higher thinking.
You know, breathing is always an excellent place to start for most people, because first of all, you have to breathe. So it's, you know, it's something that happens constantly. It's a point of attention. There's always an in and an out. And also when we get anxious, that's usually the first thing to go, is we start breathing more shallow. We're not getting enough oxygen, you know, so that is always a great place to start. I'm sure that many of you watching this have techniques for breathing or can access that online or find methods that work. So that is always the first place to start. We often don't even realize that we've stopped breathing.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So that's a really great way of doing it. I also want to say something while we're discussing what gets us wound up about something called the negativity bias, because this is huge. And I think it's really freeing to understand this in terms of, you know, our neuropsychology. So there's a part of our brain that stubbornly likes to overemphasize the negative. And it's actually the thing that helped us survive at one point in time in evolution. So back when our ancestors were out on the African savanna, you know, you would stroll down the watering hole, right, along with all the other animals. And, you know, you go down the watering hole and you see a friend of yours get hauled off by a lion, all right? terrifying experience. Next day comes and you decide you're going to go back to this watering hole because that's where you get your water. So our ancestors that went on down to the watering hole and just like tried to forget about it, it was a one-off situation, it's not going to happen again. Guess what happened to them? They got hauled off by a lion too. The ancestors of ours that never forgot the time that that person got hauled off by a lion, they never forgot it because it was dangerous. There was a really bad consequence. Those are our ancestors that survived, and we still have the legacy in our brains of never forgetting that one bad situation. So unfortunately, what this means is that we never forget the negative, but we have a hard time holding on to the positive. You know, so our brains are going to overemphasize the negative in most situations. The good news is through the field of positive psychology, there's been a tremendous amount of research on this aspect of our brain chemistry and how our brains work. And it's become clear that through conscious, focused effort, it needs to be conscious, focused effort, we can start to change the nature of that balance of our brain. So first of all, just knowing that it's very natural to overemphasize the negative is really helpful for so many humans. It's like, oh, gee, you know, I always go negative. Well, yeah, that's because you had particularly strong survive. You had a strong link to your ancestors. Bravo, right? That helped you at one point. We're no longer going to the watering hole, so now it just creates a lot of stress-related illnesses. It messes with your relationships. You know, it leads to depression. It's not a good thing, but it's a kind of a natural phenomenon of the brain. So one of the ways that you can change this dynamic is through conscious, focused effort. And some of the research that has been done around this shows that there's a couple of practices that you can do. One are gratitude practices. So
that one has been so important in my life. Like when I was really, really spinning out about all of this, and the days where I just didn't want to get out of bed, like the gratitude practice is the thing that actually lifted me up from under the covers. Okay, yes, this moment feels terrible. I have a lot to be grateful for.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is some of you may be thinking, you know, that feels like a Pollyanna thing, you know, it's, you know, right, like doing lip service to what's good. No, the only way that this works is if you can actually call up the feeling of goodness. That is what changes the brain neurochemistry. You need to be able to, for example, if you're doing a gratitude practice where you're just kind of going through it in a rote manner, not going to have any effect. But if you can sit for a minute and think about something that actually brings up a positive feeling for you, if you can access that and let it percolate, you know, they talk about, again, in the field of positive psychology, they talk a lot about aerating the lawn. Like you want to kind of like let it sink in so that it can nourish the grass. And so you need to be able to access the feeling of it and then let it grow. Like let that feeling really permeate your body, your mind. And that is what helps change that balance of the brain. It's the feeling state. So it doesn't matter what it is that you're focusing on that you feel happy about or you feel good about it, that you appreciate. It could be the same thing every single day. Like you might see your cat roll over on its back and do its cute little thing. And that just brings up a nice feeling inside. You can use it every day. If that's what feels good for you, use it.
Like when I have to watch cat videos, like I've got perfectly good cats next to me, but you know, a whole slew of cats doing adorable things will also change that over. I'm seeing a lot of comments about people reaching out to friends, and I think that feeling of friendship as part of this practice of shifting from negativity to a feeling of joy. I think that's a piece.
I'm so glad that you're bringing that up. That's on my list. And it's super important. Yeah, I'll just read through this list and then we can talk more about it. So gratitude practices, that's one of them. The next one is limiting negative input. All right, this is really huge, guys, because again, the part of our brain that wants to make sure we're not getting hauled off by a lion is also the part of our brain that keeps reading the news like 20 times a day to stay abreast of everything.
How many people died today? How many people died today? How many people died in the last 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Does that help us?
No, you need to, again, pay attention to your nervous system. And when you're getting overloaded, you want to reach the point where you're not overloaded. You don't want to get overload. So probably you don't want that to be the first thing that you do every morning. You want to get up and think about something that you're looking forward to. You know, relax, maybe, you know, kiss your wife or husband or kids good morning. You know, maybe if you're going to check the news, like, do it a little bit later. Give yourself a chance to set, you know, so that you're approaching the day in a positive way. But really think about limiting negative input. Don't overload yourself. And again, the idea is that, oh, if something bad's out there, I need to keep it in my consciousness at all times, then I'll feel safe. What you're doing is you're just extending the negative experience so that it just takes over every waking minute. And so you're living the worst case scenario all the time. Again, back to the negativity bias with the idea that's going to help you survive. But really what it does is that negatively affects your nervous system. It also affects, you know, your ability to deal with diseases, in fact, because it does affect, you know, your whole system in a very negative way. So you want to stay
System.
psychologically and physically. Yeah.